Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive into why we get stuck in life and, more importantly, how we can break free.
Interesting.
We'll be taking a close look at why most people stay stuck and how to break free.
Okay.
And hopefully we can unpack all the wisdom it holds.
It's so interesting, this whole feeling of being stuck.
Yeah,
It's something that just so many people experience. And this source, it really dives into the psychology behind it.
right.
And, one of the things that I found so fascinating was just how much of it boils down to our primal instincts.
Primal instincts.
Yeah,
That sounds a little intense.
I
What do you
know.
mean by that?
Well, think about it. Our brains are wired for survival.
Right.
And for our ancestors, survival meant sticking to the familiar.
Hmm.
Venturing out into the unknown, it could hold all sorts of dangers.
Yeah,
Predators, unfamiliar territory, all kinds of threats.
definitely.
So even if the situation wasn't ideal, it was often safer to just stay put than to risk the unknown.
Makes sense.
That whole better the devil, kind of thinking.
Yeah.
That's deeply ingrained in us.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
That makes sense in a historical context.
Right.
But how does that translate to us feeling stuck in, modern life?
Mm-hmm.
Is it like we're still running from saber-toothed tigers,
Yeah.
just in a metaphorical sense?
Exactly. That ancient wiring, it still influences us today.
Wow.
For example, think about somebody who is unhappy in their job.
I know a lot of those people.
Right. They know it's not fulfilling, but the thought of starting over,
Oh,
the
terrible.
fear of facing rejection in a new job search,
Yeah.
it can be paralyzing.
Yeah.
So they stay stuck even though it means sacrificing their dreams and their potential.
So we're essentially trading potential for a sense of security.
Yeah.
But how often is that security even real?
Right. How often is it just an illusion?
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Is it ever really a fair trade, this security for potential? How can we recognize when we're falling into that trap?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
And that's where self-awareness becomes so crucial.
Okay.
We really need to ask ourselves, is this fear based on a genuine threat, or is it just my ancient wiring holding me back?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So we need to become fearless to break free.
Well, not necessarily fearless, but we need to develop a healthy relationship with fear.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that fear, it's a natural emotion.
Right.
It's normal to feel fear, but it shouldn't be the driver of our decisions.
Okay, so maybe fear is one piece of the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
This source also talks about how our daily habits can contribute to this feeling of being stuck,
Right.
even the small ones. I feel like I'm always trying to overhaul my habits, but I never make any progress.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. We often think of habits as these big, monumental things that we need to change overnight.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating here? It's this idea of making tiny, consistent changes. The source compares it to the idea of compound interest, but for personal growth.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But in real life, how do we even identify that 1% change
Yeah.
that's both achievable and impactful?
Right.
It can feel so overwhelming to even think about it sometimes.
It absolutely can. And I think the key is to start by identifying those habits that are truly holding you back. Ask yourself, what's one small thing I could change today that would have a positive ripple effect?
So it's about being strategic with our habit changes, not just randomly trying to do everything at once.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For example, imagine someone who spends, hours every night scrolling through social media.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
What if they replace just 15 minutes of that with, say, reading something inspiring
Okay.
or practicing some gratitude journaling?
Okay.
That small tweak, over time could have a significant impact on their mindset and motivation.
That's a much better example, and it seems a lot less daunting than just quitting social media cold turkey, which is what I always try to do.
Yeah, and it illustrates how small, consistent changes can lead to incredible results over time. It's not about being perfect, it's about making progress.
Okay, so we talked about fear, we've talked about habits. I know there's another big thing that keeps people stuck, and it's the opinions of others.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's incredible how much power we give to the opinions of others. We worry about what people will think, what they will say, and we end up living their lives instead of our own.
Yeah, it's almost like we're more afraid of judgment than we are of actually failing. Is that part of that same primal wiring?
Yeah,
That need for acceptance from the group?
it very well could be. We are social creatures after all, and that sense of belonging is deeply rooted. But what's often overlooked is that the people who judge the most are often the most insecure themselves.
That's true.
Yeah, they might be projecting their own fears and limitations onto you.
So it's not necessarily that everyone is judging us.
Right.
It's just that we're anticipating that judgment based on our own insecurities.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this source, it encourages us to shift our focus away from seeking that external validation and to prioritize our own personal growth.
Okay.
What matters most is aligning your actions with your own values and goals, not with what others might think.
So instead of asking, will people approve of this, we should be asking, does this decision align with my true self and my aspirations?
Precisely.
I like that.
You know, think about someone who dreams of starting a business, but they hesitate because they worry about what their family or friends might say.
Right.
They could be missing out on an incredible opportunity simply because they're afraid of judgment.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
They could be trading their dreams for the comfort of those societal expectations.
And that's the kind of trap we need to be aware of.
Okay.
Breaking free requires not only overcoming our internal fears, but also the perceived expectations of others.
This is sort of giving me so much to think about. We've covered fear, habits, and the influence of others. What other insights does this source offer when it comes to actually breaking free? I'm ready for some actionable steps.
Okay, well, let's get into that. Well, now that we've kind of explored those deep-seated reasons why people stay stuck, let's shift gears a little bit and dive into some practical steps for actually breaking free.
Okay, yes, please.
All right.
Knowing why we get stuck is helpful.
Right.
But I'm really ready for that how-to guide for getting unstuck.
And this source definitely delivers on that.
Perfect.
It all starts with a mindset shift. We need to move away from a victim mentality
Okay.
and embrace a sense of ownership over our lives.
I hear mindset shift a lot these days.
Right.
But I'm not always sure what that actually looks like in practice. Can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that we have agency, even in challenging situations.
Okay.
You know, instead of dwelling on, why is this happening to me?
Right.
The source encourages us to ask, what can I do about it?
So it's less about the circumstances themselves and more about how we choose to respond to them.
Precisely.
Okay.
It's about focusing on what we can control, not what we can't.
Gotcha.
Imagine, for example, someone who has been laid off from their job.
Okay. Yeah.
It's really easy to fall into that victim mentality,
Right.
feeling helpless and resentful.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, that doesn't really help them move forward.
No, it sounds like it would just keep them stuck in that negative cycle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if they can shift their mindset to one of ownership,
Okay.
they can start asking those empowering questions like, what skills do I have that are valuable? What new opportunities might this open up? How can I use this as a chance to pivot in a new direction?
Wow, that's a really powerful reframing.
Yeah.
It turns what seems like a setback into a potential springboard for growth.
Exactly.
That's a much more proactive way of approaching those challenges.
And that's the kind of shift that can help us break free from feeling stuck. It's about realizing that we always have choices, even when it feels like we don't.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So mindset is key.
Right.
This source also talks about the importance of taking action
Yes.
and not waiting for everything to be perfect before we do.
Action is crucial. The source argues that action breeds confidence.
Okay.
And that momentum, it builds from even the smallest steps.
I think a lot of people struggle with that, myself included.
Yeah.
We get caught up in waiting for the perfect time, the perfect plan,
Right.
and we end up doing nothing at all.
It's that classic trap of perfectionism.
It is.
But the source reminds us that perfection is often the enemy of progress.
Oh, for sure.
You know, think about someone who dreams of writing a book,
Okay.
but they get so overwhelmed by the idea of writing a whole manuscript.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well.
Right.
I can spend months planning and outlining, but
Yeah.
actually getting those words down is a whole other story.
Exactly. But imagine if that person just committed to writing 1 page a day, even if it's not perfect. Over time, those pages, they add up.
That's true.
And eventually, they'll have a complete draft.
It's amazing how much we can accomplish when we break down those big, scary goals into smaller, more manageable steps. It shifts the focus from overwhelm to progress.
Exactly. And each small step builds confidence. And it makes it easier to keep moving forward. The source really highlights the importance of creating that positive feedback loop of action and progress.
It's like that saying, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Beautifully put.
And that journey can be a lot smoother if we surround ourselves with the right kind of support. Which leads us to another key point from this source. the power of our environment.
Hmm.
You're talking about the concept of upgrading our environment to support our growth, right?
Yes.
I'm really intrigued by that idea.
It's such a powerful concept. It's about recognizing the impact our surroundings have on our mindset and behaviors. And remember, we're not just talking about our physical space.
Okay.
It's also about the people we surround ourselves with, the information we consume, the communities we engage with, and even the way we structure our time.
So it's about being intentional about the influences we allow into our lives.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
If you're constantly surrounded by negativity, clutter, or distractions, it's going to be harder to stay focused and motivated.
Right.
The source suggests that we can actively shape our environments to support our growth.
But what about people who feel trapped in their physical surroundings?
Right?
I mean, they can't just magically move or change their environment overnight. How can they create a growth-conducive space, like mentally?
That's a great question, and it highlights the importance of finding those creative solutions.
Yeah.
It might involve creating a designated workspace, even if it's just a corner of a room,
Okay.
or carving out time for yourself in a quiet space like a library or a park.
So even small changes like decluttering our desks or bringing in some plants can have a positive impact.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's about making those conscious choices to surround ourselves with things that uplift and inspire us.
I like that.
And as we make those changes, it's important to remember that growth often involves discomfort.
And this is where I think a lot of us resist change, right?
Yeah.
We crave comfort and familiarity, even if it's keeping us stuck.
It's natural to seek comfort,
Right.
but as the source points out, everything we truly want is usually outside of our comfort zone. Feeling uncomfortable can actually be a sign that we're on the right track, that we're stretching ourselves
Okay.
and expanding our limits.
So instead of avoiding discomfort, we should actually try to embrace it as a signal that we're growing, moving towards our goals.
Precisely. Think about it. If you're not challenging yourself, you're not growing.
Right.
And growth, by its very nature, involves some level of discomfort.
That's a great way to reframe it. But it can still be scary to step outside that comfort zone.
It can.
What advice would you give to someone who's feeling hesitant to take that leap?
I'd say start small. Pick one thing that feels slightly uncomfortable but also exciting. Maybe it's trying a new activity, speaking up in a meeting, or taking on a challenging project at work.
Okay.
Remember, the more you push yourself, the more you expand your comfort zone and open up new possibilities.
It's like building a muscle.
Mm.
The more we practice stepping outside our comfort zone, the easier it becomes.
Exactly. And over time, what once felt uncomfortable will become your new normal. You'll have expanded your capacity for growth and resilience.
That's awesome. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into breaking free from stagnation. We've explored the psychology behind feeling stuck, and we've uncovered some really powerful strategies for change.
It's been quite a journey.
It has.
We've gone from understanding those primal fears to reframing our mindsets and even embracing discomfort.
You know, one of the things that has really resonated with me throughout this conversation is that idea of upgrading our environment. It seems like such a tangible, actionable step that we can take to support our growth.
It absolutely is. And it's important to remember that environment goes beyond just our physical surroundings.
Yeah.
It's about cultivating a space that really nurtures our minds and spirits as well.
Can you give us some concrete examples of what that might look like? Like, if we could design our ideal environment for growth, what would be some of those key elements?
That's a great question. For me, an ideal environment would be a space that fosters creativity,
Okay,
learning, and connection.
I like that.
It would be filled with natural light, inspiring books and art, and, a dedicated space for movement and mindfulness practices.
I love that.
Yeah.
Sanctuary for the mind, body, and soul.
Exactly.
And I imagine it would also include being surrounded by people who are supportive,
Yes.
challenging in a positive way, and growth-oriented themselves.
You're spot on. The people we surround ourselves with have a profound impact on our own growth trajectory.
Right.
Surrounding yourself with individuals who inspire you, who hold you accountable, and celebrate your wins can make all the difference.
It's like building a supportive ecosystem for growth.
Exactly.
But as we've discussed, growth isn't always easy. It often involves pushing past our comfort zones and embracing challenges.
That's so true. Discomfort is often a sign that we're stretching ourselves,
Okay.
that we're learning new things
Right.
and expanding our capabilities. It's in those moments of discomfort that we truly grow.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the key message you hope our listeners will take away from this conversation?
I think the most important takeaway is that breaking free from stagnation is a choice.
Mm,
It starts with recognizing that we have the power to change
right.
and then taking those first, often messy steps forward.
And remember, those steps don't have to be huge.
No, they don't.
It's about consistency and progress, not perfection.
Exactly. Even small, consistent actions can create incredible momentum over time.
Hmm.
And you're not alone in this journey. There are resources, communities, and support systems available to help you along the way.
That's really encouraging. And I think that's a perfect note to end on. As we conclude, I want to encourage you, our listener, to reflect on what resonated with you most during this deep dive.
Yeah.
What one action can you take today to break free from stagnation, even if it's a small one?
Just remember, change is possible. You have the power to create the life you want.
Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep breaking free.
And remember, the journey is just as important as the destination.
Yes, it is.
Be kind to yourself along the way.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We'll see you next time.